What's going on, guys? Skit Gaming here, and today I'm here to impart some good old-fashioned wisdom on you to help you in your endeavors. I've been playing some Phantom Forces recently, and as I'm getting back into the groove of things, I'm noticing more and more people making rookie mistakes. Now, I'm not claiming that I'm the best Phantom Forces player ever, nor am I the best at Blood and Iron or probably any of the things I make videos on. However, just like with those games, I can still use my experience to talk about simple practices that can improve your performance if you utilize them properly. A lot of this stuff comes to you naturally if you play long enough, but I'm hoping that a lot of new players watch this video and learn things the easy way early on in their career. And you never know, maybe there's something here that experienced players can take away too. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. For some reason or another, new players like to stack up around and behind their teammates when they're traveling somewhere. This is the exact opposite of how you should move with others, because when everybody's lined up like bowling pins, they give the enemy an easy opportunity to wipe out a whole group at once. Instead of moving in a single file column and sticking close to one another, it's better to spread out and move up on line. Not only does this prevent enemy collaterals, but it also gives your team more angles on potential hostiles. There is some merit to having more guns pointed at one enemy location, but try to stay far enough away from allies that you don't get caught in a bullet spread meant for them. If you come across a doorway or narrow passage that might have a bad guy watching it, try to move through it as quickly as possible. This can easily be done by sliding, which is triggered when you tap or double tap C while sprinting. The same can be said for corners in a dangerous area. Dart around them as quickly as possible to thwart a potential ambush. If you're approaching a firefight or crossing a lot of ground that an enemy might be monitoring, try to spontaneously change direction and dive behind cover. This may seem silly at first, but you never know when someone's watching you through a sniper scope and waiting for you to move in a predictable line so they can get a clean shot off. If you're actively engaging an enemy from a position of cover, try to make a point of not popping out in the same spot twice. The more you keep them guessing where you might show up, the more you can throw them off. This is especially true when it comes to verticality. I find that it's even less expected to go prone or climb to a different level than to move horizontally. This effect is amplified the closer you are to your opponent, as it forces them to shift their aim by more. Footsteps are more important than most people realize when it comes to this game. Enemy footsteps are deafening and can tip you off to the location of an opponent. This allows you to predict when and where an enemy will appear, so you can do things like play whack-a-mole on Metro. Don't forget that the enemy has the same advantages as you, so try to walk, jump, or dive when you're sneaking up on someone so that they don't hear you coming. Do your best not to approach the enemy head-on. Most Phantom Forces maps are built so that natural paths channel both teams into each other without much cover. If you zigzag or hop between routes, you can get much closer to an enemy without being peppered by lead on your way there. If you feel outgunned in any situation, maybe you're trying to fight a sniper across the map but you only have a PDW, or maybe you want to go down a hallway but there's an enemy at the other end who has the whole place locked down with an LMG, anytime that you feel you're at a disadvantage in a fight, don't be afraid to break contact and move to a more advantageous position or abandon the fight altogether. Too many people feel the need to slug it out to the end in cases like this, and it rarely ends well for them. There's a certain pattern that usually develops when two people are fighting one another. One person will pop out of cover, empty a magazine at the other person, then duck back down and reload while their opponent pops out and empties a mag at their position. This cycle will continue until one party manages to kill the other or someone does something that changes the nature of the fight. You want to avoid being caught up in this rhythm when you engage an enemy because it gives them a relatively fair chance of winning and buys time for more enemies to join in the fight. One way that you can interrupt the pattern is to restrain from firing all the rounds in your mag, instead reserving a third or so. Often, the enemy will then expose themselves under the assumption that you're reloading, only to find that you still have a beat on their position and plenty of rounds left to end the fight. You could also move around, use grenades, or do all manner of fancy tricks, but the main idea is to avoid getting caught up in the typical rhythm. I cannot stress to you enough the importance of frequent reloads. Every time you break contact, you should be reloading your weapon. If a new threat presents itself, you can easily cancel the reload and engage using your current weapon, or if you don't have enough rounds left, you can quickly swap to your sidearm with middle mouse button. It's good never to fully deplete a magazine, so try your best to break contact or reload before you reach that point. Here's another thing that most experienced players do, but some newcomers might not know about. Most guns in Phantom Forces fire from a closed bolt system, which, ignoring all the technical details, basically means that one round will always be stored and ready to fire inside of your weapon. This means that if you reload with one still in the chamber, you can increase your overall amount of rounds you have loaded, which usually manifests as 30 plus 1. When you're tracking an enemy and they run behind some sort of obstacle, 9 times out of 10 they will continue running at the same speed and in the same direction. This can allow you to get a sick wall bang or predict when they'll be exposed again. A lot of new players wait until they have a full, unobstructed view of their target before they engage. This can prove fatal to the shooter because many experienced players like myself aren't that picky and might just put that guy on the ground before he gets a single shot off. You'd be surprised by what you can actually shoot through. Plus, a hit on someone's half-exposed torso does the same amount of damage as a hit on a fully exposed torso. Friendly fire doesn't exist in Phantom Forces. This comes in handy when you're trying to engage a target and a teammate is determined to walk in front of you and block your shot. Don't hesitate to shoot through an ally to hit an enemy, because the enemy definitely won't hesitate to shoot through your ally and hit you. When engaging multiple enemies, try to eliminate them in order of how threatening they are to you. If you run into a room and one bad guy is looking out the window but another one sees you, it's going to be in your best interest to kill the dude who is looking at you before you turn your attention to the guy at the window. Sometimes another direct threat will appear while you're still engaging the first one. Maybe someone who previously wasn't a priority is now shooting at you, or maybe another enemy joins the action. Make sure to finish off the first target you engage before trying to fight the new threat, because let's face it, you're probably gonna die anyway, but at least now you might get a kill before you do. I can't tell you how many times I've been shooting at someone and a new bad guy shows up, so my aim shifts to a point between both of them and I die without getting any kills. It's very infuriating. This one is very important, not only to you but to your whole team. If you push E, any enemies within your line of sight will be marked with a red dot above their heads. This dot is visible to all teammates and can be seen through walls, allowing you to track locations of enemies and maybe even get some wall bangs. I mostly use the marking feature if I see enemies outside my range or if I'm sniping and I want to find out where everyone is. Make a habit of doing this because it'll help you a lot in the long run. Spawning on a teammate's a great idea in most situations. You already know where you're going to be, you're probably going to start off closer to the objective, and you can help the guy you're spawning on if things seem a bit rough for him. However, there will be times when an entire team is getting absolutely stomped on and most players are either dead or actively being shot at and ineligible to spawn on. In these situations, I find that it's better to deploy on your own, because when everyone's waiting for an open teammate to spawn on, everyone stays dead while the enemy gets free reign over the map. This tip relates solely to the Hardpoint game mode because it's my least favorite to play for one simple reason. My team never seems to understand the object of the game. Hardpoint is basically king of the hill, but the hill moves every 60 seconds and it needs to have someone inside of it to earn their team points. Here's the important part. The more players that are inside the objective, the more points your team makes per second. This might not seem like much, but believe me when I say that there's a difference between leaving one person on the point and leaving 4. If you ever find yourself sitting around the objective waiting for an enemy to show up, consider moving a couple feet so that you're in the circle, because it pays off big time. Personally, I don't use grenades often enough. Usually I'll toss them into the objective, or just chuck them in the enemy's general direction once I spawn. However, one thing I know grenades are not good for is stealth. If you're sneaking up on an enemy position and you decide to toss a grenade at them, you have now provided them with a literal glowing beacon with a trail leading directly back to you. If you aren't cooking them so they explode as soon as they leave your hand, I would recommend you pass on grenades if you're trying to be sneaky. Most knives give you a faster movement speed than your main weapons.
Let me see what you have! No!
So if there aren't any enemies around and you want to get somewhere in a hurry, consider holding your knife out. Personally, I like to swap to my sidearm before taking out my knife so that I can pull out my rifle really quick if I need to. When you get a kill or fire at the enemy from one position for a while, they're going to remember where you are and take you out. Try to stay on the move and not linger in one spot for too long. This is especially true when it comes to cranes. They may look like a good spot to snipe from, but in reality, cranes are just death traps. Once the enemy knows you're up there, there's nowhere for you to hide and plenty of places they can hide. Stay off of the cranes. This one's a bit advanced, but I'll try and make it simple enough to grasp. When 2 or more people are fighting, the side that initiates the engagement will always hold an advantage over the other side. For example, if there are 2 enemies on opposite sides of a corner and they both know that there's an adversary just around the bend, and this guy decides to wait to ambush the other guy still has the advantage because he's the one who dictates the pace of the fight. His enemy knows where he'll appear, but not when. By choosing to take the initiative himself, he knows where his enemy is and when he'll be in view. Try not to wait for someone to move up to you if they know where you're at. Instead, move to another spot or pop out and surprise them. One final little tip before I go. The enemy has the same spawning capabilities that you do. If you find one bad guy sitting in a window, assume that there's at least one more in there with him until you can prove otherwise. And that's the end. Thank you so much for watching this far. I got pretty burnt out while in the middle of writing this script, so if it seems like there's holes or shifts, it's because I wrote different parts with different attitudes. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor and leave a thumbs up. If you want to see more Phantom Forces, comment below and subscribe. The first person I see comment something about Blood and Iron is gonna feel my wrath. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time. Skit Gaming, signing out. Goodbye.